and attributes. So all of us deal with requirements, and there are certain set of attributes or details that you need to make sure you're capturing as part of your requirement. And these requirement attributes are taken from the BABOK. So without any delay, let's get into it. So what are some common requirement attributes? The very first one is absolute reference, and it's very straightforward. It provides a unique identifier. So the reference should never be altered or reused if the requirement is moved, changed, or deleted. It's very important that you have one identifier per requirement, because in future it would be easy to locate. If you're going to change about the identifier, then you need to update it in several locations, and there's a possibility that the requirement might be missed. The next one is the author. So you always need to provide the name of the person who needs to be consulted. Okay, if at all the requirement should change later on, or it is found to be ambiguous, unclear, or in conflict. So sometimes in some big projects there could be two BAs working on the project, or you would be pairing with a TL, or you would be pairing with a PO. So in some projects, okay, if it's a technical card, sometimes the tech leads, they would enter a story, but that's not the right way. Everything needs to be managed. But whenever there are two BAs or more BAs on the team for large projects, you need to make sure who is the author and owner of a requirement. So whenever, even if once the requirement goes into development, the developer would know which particular person to reach out to in case there's any confusions with the requirement or it needs any clarifications. The next one is the complexity. So this section over here indicates how difficult the requirement will be to implement. Okay, so adding on complexity information is very helpful, because when planning to take up a requirement, the teams might want to check what is the complexity of implementing this requirement. Sometimes, if you see in the impact and effort matrix, we would have seen how sometimes teams would focus on the low hanging fruits, where you put very less effort and you get high value out of it. Okay, so in cases like that, when teams are focused, when you add on complexity, it would be helpful for the team in order to prioritize requirements. The next one is ownership. So it indicates the individual or the group that needs the requirement or will be the business owners after the solution is implemented. By identifying the ownership, you would know who exactly is going to own the requirement and what are their needs and why they have actually requested for it and will be owning it. Okay, the next one is priority. So this indicates the relative importance of the requirements. So priority can refer to the relative value of a requirement, or it can be the sequence in which it has to be implemented. Any one of the two, but make sure that you add priorities to your requirements. And this again is very important, because priorities can also be taken into consideration when planning to take in a requirement in a particular sprint or take a requirement and start implementing it. The next one is risks. So you always need to mention what are the potential risks that is identified for a particular requirement. Okay, so it identifies what are the uncertain events that may impact the requirements. Okay, so whenever there is a large number of risks associated with the requirement, teams might want to put that on hold, because they don't want to take in something with a lot of uncertainty. So it's always good to call out risks rather than just hiding them, and then later the team goes and then lands up in a fix and face blockers when they are not able to move forward. The next one is source. So the source identifies the origin of the requirement. Okay, so the source is often consulted if the requirement changes, or if more information regarding the requirement is needed, or the need that the drove the requirement has to be obtained. Okay, so whenever you need to understand something more about a requirement, sometimes there is a confusion as to who I should be reaching out to get this clarified. Who is exactly the source that delivered this requirement? So in times like that, always capturing the source of the requirement would help you easily locate who is actually the person you should be reaching out to. The next one is stability. So this indicates the maturity of the requirement. How mature is this requirement, whether it's fully matured or whether it's half baked and less mature. So based on this as well, you would be able to identify and teams would be able to plan in for whether they need to take up the requirement and implement it or not. The next one is the status of the requirement, which indicates the state of the requirement, whether it's proposed or whether it's in an accepted state, verified, postponed, cancelled, or it's already implemented. So this is very useful for the team to have a visibility on what is the status, as well as when you present it to stakeholders, it would give a visibility of what is the status of each requirement. And the last one is urgency. So urgency indicates how soon the requirement is needed. Okay. So this is usually only necessary when you have to specify something apart from the priority. That is, whenever a requirement has any deadline, okay, connected to it, then you can mention the urgency. So some requirements might be a high priority, but it might be very urgent. Sometimes there could be a requirement which is a low priority and it can be urgent. So it's always good to mention the urgency of a requirement. So this also can be taken when you're planning in for requirements and take it in for implementation. So these are some of the attributes that you can capture for your requirements. I hope that you got some understanding and some information on the requirement attributes. If you like this video, please do give this a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to this channel and do share your feedbacks. Thank you.